The Falcons need to lock in for this critical stretch coming out of their bye, and that begins with naming Desmond Ridder their starting quarterback.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all in lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, joined as usual on these Thursday afternoons, Thursday evenings, Friday mornings, whenever you are listening to this podcast, by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And we appreciate each and every one of you that checks out this podcast Thursday, Friday, or whenever. Of course, we give a special shout out to the everydayers that make this illustrious podcast their first listen or first watch. And to become an everydayer, all you got to do is follow for free or subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So here with Jarvis, normally we do sort of some keys to victory, but thankfully the Falcons are not playing this Sunday. So we are having a stress-free weekend, right? We can enjoy football for once here on this illustrious podcast. And I'm sure many of you guys out there are looking forward to this weekend of stress-free without the Atlanta Falcons. But because it is the Daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, we still are going to talk about this less than illustrious football team. But because it's a bye week, we're going to be focusing on sort of get Jarvis's thoughts on what kind of changes he's looking for during this bye week, or coming out of this bye week, should we say. And sort of, Jarvis, normally I ask you what's the biggest key to victory in the upcoming week, but I guess what's the biggest change that you would like to see for the Atlanta Falcons coming out of this bye week?
Go ahead and get the quarterback situation figured out and just ride it out. Like, let's just ride it out and see where it goes. And I think that with that mindset, that's why I feel like Desmond Ridder is more than likely going to be the guy, going forward, by hook or by crook, whatever happens. And the reason why I say that is because with Taylor Heinicke being in under center, there were some limitations, right? There's a reason why he's a backup quarterback, right? As far as pushing the ball down the field, we didn't see that as much with him at the quarterback spot. So, and I think that that's something that Desmond Ridder had kind of found a little connection with Drake London, throwing the ball to him, and with those 60-40 balls. Oh, I almost did it again. Oh God, I don't know what happens to me when I come on this show. But anyway, but I think that's getting that quarterback position figured out, and to be able to help to open up this offense a little bit more, all while not keeping the ball safe too, not putting the ball on the opposing team's hands. I feel like that'll be the biggest change needed to make. And if they're trying to continue to push to this division, which we know they are, I feel like that's going to help them get there.
Yeah. So it does sound like you are in agreement that Desmond Ridder should be the starting quarterback for the remainder of the year. And
absolutely,
Arthur Smith, even though I don't think he will make that sort of commitment, you think he should basically come out of the bye week being like, unless something crazy happens, Desmond Ridder's our guy for the rest of the year?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, because here's the thing. Like, this is the guy that you said was your QB1. But you had a nice little backup plan in a $7 million backup, right, with Taylor Heinicke. So I feel like you're in a space now where you're in a prove it mode for the rest of this season. You gotta have to prove that, you made a good decision, you and Terry Fontenot, by drafting this guy, not only drafting him, moving him to that QB1 spot and saying, hey, we got to see what you all see. That's what I want to see. I want to see what you all saw in him. And I ain't talking about no intangibles and all that stuff. I'm talking about like hardcore data/film as to him putting that out on tape saying, you know what, I deserve to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Like, we've seen Sam Howell starting to do that, right? Like, people are starting to believe in him. and what he's been able to bring to the table. And he was a 5th round draft pick out of North Carolina. So, hey, if he can do it and put it on there, or put it on tape, I think Desmond Ridder has the opportunity to do that as well. And I think that Arthur Smith would behoove him to go ahead and do that, because there are a lot of people who are questioning you as a head coach, period, let alone as far as quarterback evaluation. So I think that, like, he's going to have to stick his chest out and say, you know what, I deserve to be a head coach for this team. I deserve to take this team into the next 4 or 5 years and get to the playoffs and make some noise and get it back to some respectability on Sundays at 1 o'clock at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, I don't think benching Ridder was the right move, but if Ridder does come out and plays well over these next 7 games, again, I will not look at it as like a direct correlation. It'd be like a little BS to me. Like,
yes, yeah, you will. I mean, it's okay, Aaron. It's okay.
This can be like, hey, this was all part of this grand strategy, and if the Falcons, are winning games and Desmond Ridder's playing well, then
it was probably the reset strategy. Yeah, that's what he's going. That's what he'll say. It was a reset strategy.
He gets to dictate the narrative, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Even though I'll be like, I don't really buy that. That's me, Mr.
Not you, Aaron.
Yeah.
You being petty? No.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, but here's the thing, though, man. Like, with him and with the whole quarterback situation, like, I was one that was on the side in favor of him benching Desmond Ridder, because, like, it was just too many turnovers, man. Like, and your defense was good enough to kind of hide you and keep you safe from that. But when those injuries started coming around and they started stacking up, it's just like every other team in the NFL. Like, they just weren't good enough to be able to hide that, right? So I think that him getting this quote unquote reset, I feel like it should work out in his favor. And like I said, and if it does, Arthur Smith gonna come out shining a little bit, because he's like, all right, man, I assess my quarterback. I understand. I got a good feel, a good vibe. Now, the way they did it was weird. They said when the concussion protocol, he was cleared, and then we didn't feel like he was right. It did. Desmond Ridder was like, I don't know what play y'all talking about. I was fine. But for the most part, concussion gate is weird. Everybody want to forget about that, but I pay attention to a lot of stuff, man. So, that situation will kind of just go away if Ridder comes out against New Orleans and just balls out. So, and that's what I'm rooting for, man, because I'm at the point now where I get tired of talking about bad football play. Like, I just want to see some good football, man. That's all. That's it. I ain't lost for much.
It's been a minute. So,
yes.
We just talked about, that quarterback change. We still got more to talk about, some potential changes, maybe some tweaks, right, to the coaches, maybe some personnel tweaks as well. And we'll pick Jarvis's brain on that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Guys, I want to tell you about PrizePicks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. With basketball season here, you can pick combo projections across football, basketball, and a variety of sports in their new special leagues. It's a league specifically created for combo projections, where you can pick 2 players from 2 different sports across 2 different leagues. For example, you can pick LeBron James and Travis Kelce in the combination of 3 points made and receptions. And if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few tabs. PrizePicks is really simple to play. Just pick 2 or more players and pick more or less than their projected stats. And the more entries you make, the more money you can make, up to 25 times your money. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types that make PrizePicks the #1 in daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So as we continue this bye-week breakdown of what changes we would like to see during this week off for the Atlanta Falcons, I want to plug the Locked On national shows, because now Locked On has a national 24/7 streaming channel here on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is covering all of the sports, all the biggest stories with all the local experts on YouTube, with all the experts in the national shows as well across every sports league. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe for the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel. And of course, check out the Locked On Sports Atlanta 24/7 streaming channel if you are still locked on Atlanta sports, even if you're, trying to get away from the Falcons. I don't mind you guys, going
to Georgia. You got Georgia Bulldogs, man. We talk Georgia. So,
when my face comes on the screen, and then you can, come back for the Georgia
stuff. Right. Of course.
That's how you do it. So,
yes.
Jarvis, let's talk, a little bit top-down stuff, right? And whether, Arthur Smith was asked about, are you going to make any tweaks or changes to your coaching staff? And he kind of quickly dismissed that. But, I'm not going to necessarily ask you, if you think they should make some adjustments to, maybe who's calling plays or something like that, you by all means can say so. But I'm just curious, maybe from a coaching standpoint, from one of these sort of top-down changes, is there anything that you think the team should adjust in this bye week?
To be honest with you, no, because I feel like, there's blame from the top down that can be doled out throughout up and down this organization. But I feel like there are some execution issues as well. Like, because the weirdness with the offensive line, it's just being weird. Like, so because, with Chris Lindstrom not playing like we've known him to play, and that's probably playing as one of the better guards in the NFL. Not the best, but one of the better guards in the NFL. And I think that with Caleb McGarry, true. Like you're a pretty decent run blocker, but there have been some times where you haven't looked like you've looked below average to bad in that category. So I need that to get back up to at least average to good, on that side, when it comes to running the football. And I think that, the commitment to running the football is going to help as well, because I feel like they were kind of a tale of two offenses, right? So we saw what Desmond Ridder was able to do. He was, having a good game. They were moving the ball, but they weren't able to finish in the red zone. And then when they made the change, you had all this underneath stuff, but you became obvious, and you start overcompensating Arthur with giving Bijan Robinson, turn around, give him the rock 20 times, all that stuff, and not really get it to him in the passing game too, which is kind of interesting as well. But I think that if you can kind of take the passing game with Ridder and kind of bring the running game that you had with Heineke and kind of put those two together and put it up in the pot and kind of make sure that kind of coincides with each other, I feel like you'd be doing yourself a good service, because like you have some guys to throw the ball down the field to, right? Like you have Drake London. And I'm at a point now where I want to see Kyle Pitts a little bit more. They've been getting him the ball for the most part, and I feel like Ridder was starting to get that nice little cohesion with 8 before he got benched. So I think continue to stack good games with that, or stack on top of that cohesion and get that going. So and with that commitment to the run and getting Bijan the rock, and and don't forget about Tyler Edgier, because like he has some value there. So I think just from a whole offensive scheme standpoint, knowing who you are, knowing what you can do, and trusting the rookie quarterback not the rookie quarterback, second-year quarterback in Desmond Ridder, it just he's just gonna have to do what he has. He's just gonna have to make those plays, because if you're in his head telling him, hey, don't turn the ball over, and he's checked down Charlie every doggone game, that's not gonna get you anywhere either. And so I think he's gonna have to find that balance between, hey, being willing to take a chance downfield versus putting the ball in the defender's hands. And that, and if they able to find that balance, I really feel like that'd be a really good change for them in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned the word balance, and it feels like this team has been so unbalanced this year, because it feels like anytime they make strides in one area, they seem to take a step back in another area.
Absolutely.
And it's like we haven't really seen this team play a complete game. It's like, okay, well, the running game's been taking a step forward these last couple of weeks, and passing games seems to sort of be going back. I'm curious, Jarvis, do you feel like there's some underlying cause for why this team seems to be disjointed? We always sort of point to the coaches and say it's a leadership issue, it's a motivation issue. And, again, those are just sort of like nebulous sort of things, but like, do you feel like that's a fair criticism with, this team in their sort of inability to play sort of a complete unified, performance?
I mean, because when you think about, like, a lot of times when it comes to this team, it's not necessarily that everybody's playing bad on a play in and play out basis. It's just like one or two guys that might have a mental lapse. It's just like, okay, what are you doing on this play and why are you doing that? Or why aren't you doing this on this particular play? So, I brought that out on, a couple of plays on breakdowns on Twitter or X or however you want to refer to it as nowadays. So I think that it's a matter of just focusing. I hate to sound so simplistic, but it just, I feel like that's what it is. Like, on the defensive side, just missed tackles. Like, what are we talking about? Missed tackles? Like, now, granted, there are some guys that could, in this league that can make you miss on a consistent basis, but I don't feel like that necessarily has been the case of given the quality of teams that they face in these last 3 games in this losing streak. So that's just a matter of locking in and making sure they do that on both sides of the football at every position on every play. And I know that may sound a little hard for people, the ADHD folks out there, but they have to do it. And because one or two people, missing a block or not communicating about who you're going to take if they do a game or something like that up front on the offensive line, that can really blank up a play, man. And I think that they can't afford to do that given the situation they're in right now, because they are literally on an uphill battle. I think I was saying that they got like a little bit over 30% chance of making the playoffs. And everybody's screaming, oh, yeah, they're in second place in the division. Yeah. But they got a 30-some% chance of getting into the playoffs. That's not good. And we're more than halfway through the season. So, like, we talking about what, 5-2, to try to get into the playoffs, So it's just like, yeah, this is they're in dire need right now, and I think their mental focus it has to be number one. Regardless of what the game plan is or what plays they're gonna run and all that stuff. Like, it has to be a focus on every play, like false starts and all that crap. All that stuff got to go out the window, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. Their margin for error is, razor thin at this point in time, and every loss that they have from here on out, I would love to see them run the table and go 7-0, but I ain't that ain't happening. I would love to see it, but
I'll ask you what type of drugs you on and say, can I have some a little bit later on once we get off the show?
They ain't doing that. 5-2 feels like the best case scenario at this point.
Real, yeah.
And pretty much every game now at this point feels kind of like a must-win game, especially in the division coming out of the bye against the Saints. But you talk about players locking in. Maybe you want to make some changes to some of the personnel as well, right? So we'll pick your brain on that. You sort of look at various position groups. We've already talked about the quarterback position, but are there skill positions? Are there some tweaks and changes you would like to make to the pass rush rotation that maybe you would see a little bit improvement there, or maybe some changes elsewhere, like in the secondary or something like that? So we'll pick Jarvis's brain on those subjects as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, guys, good, bad, or in between, it's tough to root for your favorite team when you're on an empty stomach. And you can solve that problem with DoorDash. Whether your team is winning and you want to celebrate, whether your team is losing and you're just looking for a pick-me-up, DoorDash has the unbeatable deals on everything you need for your watch party or tailgate. All your favorite restaurants, stores, from retail to grocery, are all on an app so that you can shop for everything you need to be game day ready. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% up to a $10 value, 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. That's promo code LOCK23, LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change. Terms apply. So wrapping up here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And while I have Jarvis here, might as well plug the Locked On NFL Kickoff Live Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Get you guys geared up for this stress-free weekend of Falcons football, or not Falcons football, of NFL football. Fabulous football, not Falcons. Yes. Fabulous, you know.
Stress-free Sundays, man. Yeah.
Is fabulous football. And so check that out Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're subscribed to Locked On Falcons, you're already, geared to watch that on Locked On Falcons or any other Locked On NFL YouTube channel. So subscribe to Locked On Falcons so that you don't miss that Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So Jarvis, we talked about the quarterback. We talked about the coaches. Are there any other tweaks to the, lineup that you would like to see? I know you were pretty critical of Richie Grant coming out of the Arizona game. It was rough game for Richie.
Rough Richie.
Yeah. For me, when I look at it, it's been very up and down for Richie this year. Like he has had a disappointing year, but I kind of look at it and I'm just like, do the Falcons have a better option than Richie Grant at this point in time? But I'll give you the floor. And, if you think they do, or there's another position or rotation that you would tweak, the floor is yours.
So for me, I look at it like this: like we've seen we've seen 3 years of Richie Grant right at this point. And, like there was some due to injury, he was kind of thrust into the whole nickel corner situation. I thought he did a solid job. And then last year, he had his first year as a starter, which I thought was fine. And then this year, like we started to see the up and down, like the inconsistencies. And I think that when you start getting to your third year, I feel like there are certain things that you shouldn't be seeing, right? There's one thing to just get beat by just an amazing wide receiver or an amazing tight end and coverage or something like that. But to be consistently beat that way against a guy who, and Trey McBride, like, let's just face it, everybody was looking at him like, why did y'all take that dude that high? There was no, like the people who drafted him and said he was worthy, they're no longer there. So, when you think about that situation where people are coming off that game saying, man, maybe he could be a good player in the NFL. That's not good, especially when you were charged with, covering this man for most of the game, and we're not. So I say all that to say, like there's a reason why this team signed veteran guys, because they wanted to not have to worry about certain things or certain issues that they had last year when a whole bunch of young guys were playing and 1 year guys who just weren't good, so, and when you bring that type of stuff to the table, I feel like if you got a guy in DeMarcco Hellams who was a really solid tackler, we saw in the preseason that, hey, the guy could take the ball away too. So there are certain things that I'll be willing to put up with, so to speak, versus seeing a guy like Richie Grant who's been around, who knows the game, who should know this system, like the back of his hand, because he came around eventually in Dean Pease's system and understood that one. And we all know his struggles with that to start off with. So it's just like, all right, if we're not getting the basic stuff from a veteran guy, so at least I can get the basic stuff from the young pup and put up with a couple of, hiccups from here and there. I feel like that needs to be in consideration. Those are the type of moves I feel like they need to consider as, because you got a 2 week, ramp up for a divisional opponent. And there are just certain things that I'm not willing to accept from a guy who's been in the NFL. And I just feel like he's just been so inconsistent with those things. And I feel like there should be a tweak. There should be some consideration to get a guy like DeMarcco Hellams a little bit more playing time.
Yeah, I think it's all fair. Like, it's year 3. that's usually the year where you expect the players to kind of round into form, and you haven't really seen that from Richie Grant. We talked a big game about, Jesse Bates being sort of that guardian angel in the back end that would allow Richie Grant to be this sort of aggressive type of player and allow him to make plays. And he's been aggressive, but it's allowed the other team to make more plays against him, especially those double moves. And so it just hasn't worked out for him. So far this season, when people have asked me about it, I've just basically been like, yeah, it's been up and down. You hope that the ups start outweighing the downs at some point,
Right.
You just kind of hope that pendulum swings in the good direction. But it's hard to, at this point, it's hard to sort of be optimistic about that, given that where we are in this season, where we are in his career, that's going to suddenly change. So,
oh yeah, and another thing, let me go ahead and we need to see what's going on with this whole pass rush situation, right? I said coming to this season that if Lorenzo Carter is starting on his team, or if Lorenzo Carter is playing a lot on his team, we got problems. And he's been playing a lot more than I expected, in 2023. So with that being said, I feel like even though Arnold Ebiketie, all he had to do was just don't let the man get outside. Keep your outside shoulder, all that stuff, all the D-lineman stuff, man, that basic D-lineman stuff, man. Just all you gotta do, and then I promise you, he would have been right into your lap, and the game probably would have been over. And I think that, because guys like Bud Dupree, who couldn't finish against the Minnesota Vikings, right? That could have been a game-ending drive, and they could have won the game, and we probably wouldn't even be having these conversations right now. It's just those little things like that where you need to figure out who you have. Now, you can still try to win games, but you need to figure out who you have. Why can't D'Angelo Malone get a rush? I know Ryan Nielsen don't want these little dudes on the end of that defensive line. I get it. I know where they're going. Zach Harrison type guys. That's where they're moving towards. Cam Jordan. I even put that. I even hate to even mention his name, in the same sentence with a guy like Zach Harrison, but that's where they're headed as far as what those the defensive ends are going to look like in this defense. So, but I do feel like those guys need to get more opportunities to rush the passer because they're young, and you could tell at the end of the game these cats are gas, man. Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree, man, they don't need to be playing that amount of snaps at this age, at this point, because those guys they've been in the league for quite a long time. And as you can see, they wear down quickly. So I think the more you get those young pups in there to rush the passer and get some fresh legs in there, man, let's see what they got. Let's see what's going on, man. Let's see what's popping. Let's see if terrifying those valuations are where they need to be. Because if they aren't, the conversation is going to need to be had and getting this stuff right in the offseason. And taking best player available that plays damn defense and not I ain't gonna say it. I promise you. I ain't gonna say it. I'm not gonna say his name. I promise you. He been trending on my Twitter every day for this week. I don't know why. I don't know if he good at football or something, but I ain't gonna say his name on the Locked On Falcons postcast. I promise you. Podcast. Yes, I promise I won't say his name because I know, how you feel about.
I don't feel so. I know how Twitter's algorithm works. They're like, hey, this Jarvis guy loves his Eagle stuff because of this one guy, so we're gonna put it on his feed because that's what
we know he's gonna be an idiot and click on it and get mad.
It ain't on my feed. I just get Bijan stuff because reasons. But if people complaining about Bijan's resume,
you get wine suggestions and stuff, on your algorithm.
That's how my algorithm works. But
yes.
That's where we're going to leave it, guys. In today's episode, we'll be back with more defensive bye week breakdown. We'll go through the different position groups, looking at some of these tweets that Jarvis has suggested, and some of my thoughts on what the defense has looked like so far this season, as well as sort of take a little bit of a look ahead to the future of this offseason and where some of those personnel changes that Jarvis is talking about maybe had. So look forward to that. Continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. And check out Locked On NFL. Check out the Locked On NFL Kickoff Live, and check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Atlanta on your 24/7 streaming channels.